And let us just recap what we discussed earlier. So emotions. How important are emotions? We talked about that they are essential. Emotions are essential for survival and enjoyment. Changing emotions is the spark of life. Within acceptable limits, they are essential. In the extreme, all emotions have negative effects. Emotion and spirituality is different in my opinion. I will read that again. Emotion and spirituality is different in my opinion. Others may differ. So emotion part 2, what are we going to talk about here? We are going to talk about the health impact of emotion. We are going to look in depth as to how it affects us. We are going to talk a bit about ways to handle emotions, and then we are going to summarize it all. So when we talk about emotions and health, we are going to identify the 4 or 5 major emotions that we can discuss to make an example of it and understand what is going on. So first, let's start with fear. Fear can influence us in many ways. We all know that. For some, it can make our pants sweat. It is not uncommon for people to notice that. Extreme fear can empty our bowel and bladder. Generally, bladder before bowel. We know when we are in a fearful state, the heart starts thumping and face can go white with sweat breaking out. Now, this can happen in a face-to-face confrontation. You see something dangerous and you become fearful. Or it can happen in a movie where you're sitting still watching a movie, and like I said, you experience that fear because of the scenes in the movie, and your heart starts thumping and you may go white, hands and feet may go cold and you panic and all that sort of stuff happens. Now we consider that as part of excitement, but this is the reality of how fear can influence us, whether it is directly visible or in a movie situation as well. Please understand that in a movie situation, you know when you're going into the movie theater that it is a scary movie. People went to see Psycho, which is a very old movie, which was very scary. They knew it was going to be scary. They knew that it was going to be screams, etc. But they still went there and they still went for that, experiencing that fear, because they thought that was excitement. So even if it is a movie, people can get that afraid. There can be fear of known people or places that can elicit fear response and need to avoid the place or person. Now this fear I'm talking about, if there is abuse, if there is intolerance, if there is sort of aggression, then the child may fear the parent, child may fear the teacher, the child may fear authority, a woman may fear her partner, or I may fear somebody on the street who looks aggressive and who looks gross and who is sort of scary. And all these things elicit, just the thought of that person also can elicit that fear. Now this fear can rest within a person for days, weeks or months, and sometimes a lifetime as well. And this is where we start getting cautious and we start wondering how big an impact some of these emotions can have. For example, the fear of abuse or fear of a child because of a very disciplinarian parent or a very harsh, aggressive parent can be with the person sometimes for life. Something around them just has to drop and make a clanging noise, and if it reminds them of their shouting father or parent, they suddenly freeze and their performance drops. Now this is the type of fear that we are talking about, which affects an individual and can influence their life and change them. Fear of abuse can change lives. Okay, and we are going to talk a little bit more about that part later on. But this is just to give you a perspective of how fear can change and influence us in a drastic way, unbeknown to us. We think it's all okay, but from the kid's perspective, from the woman's perspective, from the man's perspective, from their own individual perspective, there can be extreme fear. So now let us look at anger. Anger is known to make people go red-faced in extreme anger. And I have seen this. People can get so angry that the eyes go red as if they're going to pop out, their face goes taut, their face goes reddish. You can see some of the blood vessels feel like they're going to pop out. Some people, especially kids, are known to suffer from epileptic fits when they get very angry. Now, of course, when they get very angry, they hold their breath and all that sort of stuff. But the net result is they can suffer epileptic fits. Extreme anger, some people, more the older person, can have sudden attack of stroke due to excess blood flow and pressure to the brain. We know that extreme anger can lead to increased blood pressure, excess flow to the brain, and that if the blood vessels are weak, there's likely to be a paralytic attack. When we are angry, a lot of us act irrationally. Even in mild anger, we can act irrationally. We say things we regret later on and say, why did I say that? Oh, I was so angry, I just said it. And the long-term effects of anger, people can have blood pressure, ulcers, etc., headaches, and a whole range of issues, which, unbeknown to them, they are slowly weakening their body in those areas, and long-term ill effects of health occur. Love. Now, this is generally known to be a very good emotion. But people are known to go crazy. And in their craziness, they may have an accident, they may be sort of... Now, this kind of love is more infatuation and love rather than pure unconditional love. And I'm touching on that a little bit. So people known to go crazy when they are in love and more in the infatuation phase. They may commit to things that they normally would not. So, in their lovey-dovey state, somebody says, do this, darling, do this, honey, and they'll say, yeah, and then wonder why the hell did they say yes. When they are in that infatuated phase or in love, they may take undue risks at times, because either they want to be a macho man, or they want to show their commitment, or they want to show that they love them so much that they are prepared to do anything, whether it's man or woman, boy or girl. When there is true, deep love, there is total trust, then the infatuation element has worn off and there is just pure, true love or unconditional love. Then the trust develops and then you care for the person. You tend not to do crazy things, but you will do risky things because of the safety of the partner or their compromised situation and that sort of stuff. When you're in true unconditional love, there is complete understanding and peace in the relationship. The infatuation process has worn out. And true deep love or unconditional love, the only ideal one I can constantly portray is mother's love to their child. They will do anything to protect their children at any cost. Cost to themselves, but help try and protect their child. And that is unconditional love. That does not mean fathers cannot have unconditional love. Siblings cannot have unconditional love. Every one of us can have. But a classic example that I'm giving is for all of us to understand very clearly that unconditional love is a mother's love for their child, especially when they are babies. It does tend to stay even you're an adult. Even today, my mother worries about me as to what I've eaten and what I've not eaten and why I'm not looking after myself. So maybe it is inherent in a mother. Now we know about joy and we think joy is great and there is no issues with it, but it is unfortunate and sad to bring reality to you that in extreme joy, when somebody suffers extreme joy, they are known to have heart attacks and sometimes can die in extreme joy. There are very rare but medical examples of somebody winning a massive lottery, being so happy and gay, and next thing they have had a massive heart attack and are found dead. And there are other instances in life where people have had extreme joy, really been happy, and have a massive heart attack and they pass away. When you're in joy, you may forget to eat, sleep, etc. because you're so happy you don't think of anything else and everything works well. It is also interesting to note that when you're in that happy state, whether you're in your workaholic status of joy, or whether you're in your pastime status of joy, or whether you're in a relationship, that forgetting to eat does not mean you go hungry and suffer. You just don't feel hungry. You just don't seem to need that extra sleep and you seem to be able to manage quite well. Of course, long-term practice of such things will lead to problems. When you're in joy, life appears complete. You don't want anything else. You just feel life is so wonderful. I am happy and I want to stay happy. But unfortunately, life does not give us that benefit of being happy all the time. So that is the sad part. But yes, joy makes life complete. Grief. Grief is an emotion that most of us experience in our life. Some experience it earlier, others later in life. The biggest common cause of grief is a death in the family, whether it's a pet, whether it's a family member, whether it's a relation, whether it's somebody, a friend you were close to. Anyone's passing away is a cause for grief, because you are attached to that person, and that attachment, when suddenly taken away from you, causes grief. The closeness of that attachment, the intensity of that attachment, the passion in that attachment leads to deeper grief. So, if somebody dies prematurely, suddenly, unexpectedly, then the grief and shock is fairly massive because you're not expecting that. If I lose a parent in old age, I don't regret so much because I'm happy they've had a good life. But if I lose a parent when I'm only 5 years old, it is a massive loss. It is a vacuum never to be filled. And that sometimes can lead us astray or influence us in such a manner that it can propel our lifestyle in a different direction. But we'll talk about that in a minute. The shock that affects people and can take months to recover, and sometimes no treatment is required. Here I am referring to loss of a family member, generally more parents of young children. They get worse hit, or partners of people who have deceased. So let's say armed forces people losing their life in a war situation, or I losing my wife in an accident situation. She was on her way to work, knocked out by a car, and bang, she's no more. Now this sets a process of grief which can be quite hard to recover. Some recover very quickly, others don't. Now, when we suffer from shock due to grief, it is a common observation that you rush around, call the doctor, doctor comes in, looks at the person, checks the person and says, oh look, nothing wrong, just in shock, give him some drink, he will wake up. Unfortunately, it does not stop there. The person wakes up and is living in a daze, sometimes for days, weeks, months. Weeks later, sometimes they may say, where is dad, where is mom? That sort of stuff can continue to happen. And it can take months before that person touches reality again in his full scope. I've seen examples of people being hurt that way, and how for up to nearly a year or a bit longer, they could walk down the street, you could walk past them, say hello, and they would not recognize you even though they know you well. It was only after a period of over a year that the person started to acknowledge. Today I still know that person nearly 20 years later, and I'm not sure whether he's still carrying a scar of that loss. He appears normal to me, but if he's still carrying that scar, then it is influencing his personality and his life as well. So, grief can change and influence their lives completely. How do we direct emotions towards better health? Having understood the power of emotions and their impact on the human body and psyche, we need to tone down our emotional content with control. Now, when I say with control, I'm not talking about like an introvert. I don't show my anger, but I'm very angry inside. It hurts more. If you express it, at least it is excreted in some percentage. So, it does not mean like a pressure cooker where you stick it within you like an introvert and then suffer the consequences. It means taking the pressure off completely and letting it go. So you need to learn the art of neutralizing your emotions. One of the simplest techniques at the start of an emotional interaction is to count backwards from 10 to 1. So if somebody stands in front of me, my boss is in front of me and is abusing me left, right and center, if I just count from 10 to 1 backwards before I open my mouth, there's a chance that I'm going to react in a different manner than if I just took off straight away, and I might say something I regret. Walking away from the situation physically or mentally. So if I'm at home and my mother is pestering me and punishing me and asking me to do things which I'm not happy with, I can either physically or mentally walk away from that situation, because I know otherwise I might respond differently and there could be more fireworks and more problems for me, because in the later part of my life I might regret having spoken to my mom differently, that I didn't wish to, but I was forced to by my emotional change. So how to handle emotions? Learn to live in the moment. One of the biggest baggage we carry with emotions is yesterday's emotions are still with us. Now when I say yesterday, I'm talking about instant before as well. So 5 minutes ago what somebody said to me, I'm carrying it and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get at that person, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get her, I'm going to teach them a lesson. So we need to learn to live in the moment. Remember, the past, what happened 5 minutes ago cannot be changed. It is done deal. We are already locked in it. So at least be pragmatic and look to the future with a difference. Now sometimes it might mean being a Gandhiji where you take one slap and get the other cheek slapped as well. But I'm not suggesting that either. But definitely look at ways to overcome that. Assertiveness is one such manner, a technique. The fight or flight response as we know it is an inherent response, but if you learn it and use it properly and bring some form of control over it, because stimulus leads to response and the response is stress. So if you learn to modulate the stimulus, and we'll talk a bit about that later, then you are in a better position to modify the response and thus reduce your stress. And thus the effect of that emotion on you. Do not let emotions rule your body. Reduce the impact. Be Sthita Prajna. Now for most Bharatiya people, Sthita Prajna is a well-known word which means total balance and living in harmony. Living in the moment. You don't react. You become non-reactive to anything and everything around you. For the people overseas who do not understand Sthita Prajna, just understand that if you're cool, calm, collected and non-responsive to anything that is happening around you, you don't let it affect you. That is the exact state of Sthita Prajna. And learn to be accepting of life. Life always throws up different challenges at different times, the least expected. So just accept life as it is and move on. There are going to be problems, there are going to be hurdles to be overcome, but that is the way you need to go about it. So handling emotions. Fundamentally, first understand your nature and how you are. Work out a plan to diffuse your emotions when you do have it. For example, some people might find that heavy workout may get rid of some of their emotional charge status. Some people may find meditation is helpful. Some people may find going away from the scene, going to a beach, looking at the beach, looking at nature helps them relax and change their perspective. You need to learn to change the perception of stimuli in your mind. So a classic example that comes to me, if somebody comes and screams at me, I can just block it and say, okay, they are screaming, but are they screaming to me? Let's just forget it. Let me listen to the words. Do the words have any specific meaning that I need to address? Forget the screaming part. And if I do that, suddenly I find that the screaming or non-screaming words become equal. Now if the screaming or non-screaming words become equal, then I'm following the meaning of the words and not the tone of voice and not getting worked up. And thus I'm changing the perception of the stimuli in my mind and responding to correctly only to the data that is coming through. If the screaming and ranting is loud and unwanted and unrelated to anything, I can just sit still, and when that person has stopped and say, I can say something like, so what is it you really want to say? All that you said carried no meaning. And then that person calmly will state what they have to say, and then you can respond to that. Accept things coolly. I just gave you an example of accepting things coolly, but similarly, just take it in your stride and move on. Develop a sthita prajna attitude. Now, of course, I've explained that earlier. So just see if you can do that. A total calm, controlled, non-reactive attitude to life. Implement it regularly. You cannot just do it once and forget about it. This is an ongoing thing. Life is an ongoing battle of wits and changes, and you need to sort of be on the ball and apply whatever skills you have to the best. So, what are the rules and tips for handling your emotions? Count backwards from 10 to 1. Walk away from the scenario, physically or mentally. Now, I have said physically or mentally. Physically, you can see how to walk away. Mentally, you can just switch off. This is commonly done by kids. Parents are telling them, you should study, you should do this, you should do that. You didn't make the bed, you didn't put your shoes in the right place, and they are so switched off, they haven't really heard anything that you have said. That is not good either, but let us just use that as an example to walk away mentally. Develop sthita prajna attitude. Start becoming a loner. So if you find that you know people, stay aloof from unwanted company. I'll take both those points together. If I know that a particular person is irritating me, then I would rather be a loner rather than in their company. So you start being aloof from that type of company, and then become a loner if required. Become selective about people and places you visit. Flag people where you need to be alert. Across your growth, personal interaction, you will find there are some people you need to be careful about. They may say things, they may not say things, they may react differently and you don't like it. So you need to flag these people. So when you're close to them, you're on alert, listening to everything and modifying your behavior and not letting those interactions affect you emotionally to cause you stress and cause you problems. And of course, ideally learn to live in the moment. So the past doesn't exist, the future is yet to come. So you live in the moment and do what you can do, and you'll find you'll be a much better person for that. Now, learning to handle emotions, relaxation is a good tool, meditation is a good tool, and we are going to talk about that in future videos. Sthita prajna attitude development, which I talked about, learning to live in the moment, changing perception of stimuli, and being cool. Now, changing perception of stimuli. Perception is our understanding of stimuli. Okay, so like I said, somebody can touch me and I can get affected drastically, or somebody can touch me and I can relax and enjoy that stimulus. So it is our response to that stimuli that creates the stress. We can easily alter our understanding or effect or perception of our stimuli. Let's take a classic case of noise around you. Whether it's children making a noise, whether it's a traffic noise because you live close to a busy street, or whether it's the noise of a railway a train going past your house because you live close to the rail track. All these noises become a part of you, and you can continue to live your life normally. Living next to a busy street or a railway track, you will notice that as soon as you might be in a conversation, but as soon as the train or traffic noise increases, your volume automatically increases. In spite of the noise, you will find that you can hear people. It is not like now you can't hear anybody. In spite of the noise, you find that you can focus, you can concentrate, and you can continue to perform. You don't have to stop. Every time a train goes by, you don't stop and say, I can't do anything. Similarly, when children are creating a racket or noise around the house, you can just bypass that and continue with your life. Some people can do that. They train themselves to do that. Others can't, and then they suffer the consequences. It is of course harder to do so with emotions. For example, and this didn't happen to me, I'm just giving an example. Let us say my father screams at me and I hate it. But considering that I know for a fact that my father is very loving and does not understand how to show his love, I can then alter my reaction to his scary stimuli of screaming at me. So what do? Even if my father screams at me, I consider that as loving thoughts. So the scream is demoted to just the words, and the words I carry out the actions. And I don't let that scream affect me. Now this is a lot harder to do. It is not an easy job. Besides, it may be a coping mechanism as a child, but sometimes people can get so worked up with that it can persist with them as a problem in their adulthood. Like I said before, if I have got somebody screaming around me all the time with instructions and whatever, and you don't like it, then in the future when anybody screams, you suddenly develop that hate attitude. Sometimes even to the point that if pots and pans fall down and make a clatter, undue heavy noise, you get perturbed by it. Relaxation. We are going to talk about relaxation, but understanding relaxation, difference between relaxation as an exercise and just sitting back and relaxing, using the sleep graph as a comparison, which we'll talk about later. The benefits of relaxation and how this can help emotional management. So when we come to relaxation, we have got a separate video and we will talk about some of these things there. Meditation. Learning the art of meditation. Now meditation has got lots of different views and lots of different scopes, and we do have a video on meditation coming up. There are different techniques, they all head to the same goal. It is a very difficult thing due to the abstract idea of meditation. What I say may not be the same thing you understand, and that creates its own problems. But we'll be talking more about meditation in the session on meditation. Sthita Prajna attitude. Non-responsive, relaxed, cool, calm, collected attitude where you don't let things influence you. So it's a nonchalant attitude to life. Does not affect your mental composure with changes around you. Cool, calm and indifferent to changes around you. It doesn't mean that you let it affect you but you show indifference. You actually do not let it affect you. That is Sthita Prajna. Without stimulating your body at all. Living in the moment. So, learning to focus on the here and now. Forget the past. Do not think of the future. Focus on what's on hand only at all times. Focus on what's on hand only at all times. Accept things coolly. Learn to become accepting of things. Do not let the situation overwhelm you. Respond minimally to such outbursts. Now we come to the end of the session and our health benefit time. We have talked a lot about emotions. We have talked about the joy, sorrow, grief, anger, frustration, fear, etc. Their effects on health, how they can influence us. We have touched on different aspects of how to handle emotions, how to become better at it. Looked at relaxation, meditation, Sthita Prajna attitude, be cool, etc., etc. And given you a template to think about how to overcome some of the problems of emotions. We do know that it is not as easy as we talk about, but this is the first step towards making you aware and helping you understand that. The other aspect of this particular video was also for people to understand how they, in their ignorance, may be actually causing emotional trauma to others. And I sincerely hope those who see that and understand that and perceive the change they should have may bring about change in themselves to influence others better. So doing these things, once you understand, you will try to start looking at emotional management better, non-responsive to certain emotions, and control yourself better and have less negative impacts on health, and thus slowly take away from draining yourself as much as you were before, and thus conserving your energy and becoming freer from disease. A bit about me. I practice from Pune. I've got an acupuncture natural therapy clinic. I teach Surya Namaskar. It takes us 8 hours over 8 weeks to teach Surya Namaskar properly. We have 70 plus levels of difficulty. We are in the process of bringing science to naturopathy. I'm a Shivambu practitioner and an expert at it, so I propagate that a lot. We are offering a free internet clinic for the last 4-5 years, where people can contact me on email and I try to connect with them and give them advice that can help them in their health. Presently that's going worldwide and a lot of people are benefiting. At least that's what they tell me. And now we are looking at this series on health where we are propagating freedom from disease, and we are coming to you with different topics every week. We are halfway there and we are getting a good response, and this goes on for another couple of months. So we expect that all of you would like to listen, understand, bring it into your life, bring change to your life, and hopefully head towards becoming freer from disease. On this note, let me say goodbye to you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, and I'll catch up with you next week.
Thank you, Anand Bapat, for your valuable information on health. This series is a 15 to 22 part series on developing oneself into a healthy person. This series will educate, guide, and provide support through our online educational and support services to enhance your health. All queries are welcome on the following email.
Download app Health Siren for all health solutions at your doorstep.